Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Wednesday the 3rd. Wednesday the 3rd of April, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. The Ukrainian war is not going so great for Ukraine. Ukrainian officers issue a stark warning of potential collapse in the war against Russia. Things aren't going so good. Says in a sobering assessment reported by Politico, senior Ukrainian military officials have voiced grave concerns over the potential of the country's front lines to collapse on the ongoing conflict with Russia. The front lines could collapse, according to this. Officers who served under the former commander-in-chief, I can't pronounce his name, looks like Valerie. I think the J is silent. I'm not sure. Paint a grim picture of the situation, highlighted. Excuse me for a sec. Anyway, the country is in a grim situation. There's these new glide bombs that can glide for like miles and come down and rain down on the Ukrainians. Russian, and they're very powerful bombs. Now, Jim Rickards this article is in from Zero Hedge, and it's talking about how that this situation's very dangerous. Ukraine is starting to get dangerous. Well, it's been dangerous all along. It's been dangerous from the very start. It was really dangerous toward the start of the war, and like I say, wars toward the start and toward the finish. Those are the dangerous periods. And he says a lot of people have forgotten about the war in Ukraine. That's a mistake, he says. Yeah. And I'm going to get explaining the reason why. Desperation in the Western elite circles, determined to stop Russia one way or the other. It's this desperation that could lead us into World War III. Because, as I pointed out in the last article, Ukraine is in big, dire trouble. And so the big question here that comes down to is, if Russia keeps making the advance, and they get to a certain point where maybe Ukraine is going to fall, despite all of the Western support that they've given Ukraine, tremendous support, but they're starting to get low on munitions from the West even, and how much they're going to give Ukraine is coming into question. How many soldiers can Ukraine muster at this point? What we're looking at is a big question mark. The big question mark is, what is NATO going to do when it comes right down to the crux? When they're faced with losing Ukraine, what would they do? That's the big question, you know. And would they send troops in? Because if they do, it says, they added here, they said Tolstoy added that it would just take 2 minutes to nuke Paris. It's not hard to envision how quickly things could escalate if France decided to send troops to Ukraine. It says, meanwhile, NATO is preparing to send F-16s to Ukraine. Airfields in Ukraine are highly vulnerable to Russian attack, especially since Ukraine's air defenses are heavily depleted at this point, and the Russian Air Force is becoming increasingly active in Ukraine. So we got a Russian Air Force becoming increasingly active in Ukraine now, again. And we're going to throw F-16s into that mix. So we're going to have F-16s flying around. And Russians still fly the MiGs? Not exactly sure. But there would be battles in the air between F-16s, American-made F-16s, and Russian jets. Could be. I mean, this thing could escalate out of control so quick and easy. So this is not over, and this is a very dangerous situation that's happening. Russia and Ukraine war. Our spirit does not give up, Zelensky says in an Easter message. Just that statement alone tells you how things are going. Russian-Ukraine war. He says, our spirit does not give up. Zelensky in an Easter message. So things are not going so good over there. There's a culmination coming. That's what I see. Some sort of a culmination here. And it depends on what NATO's going to do. And they probably know already what they're going to do in this situation. So we're going to keep our eye on this very carefully. Now NATO is unwavering in their support. It says NATO proposes $100 billion more. A 5-year fund to aid Ukraine. So over 5 years. Well, Ukraine, I think, is going through money an awful lot quicker than that. 5 years, $100 billion. I don't think, especially the way the dollar is having its value inflated away. Now in Israel is facing a two-front, maybe even a three-front war after their latest strike against Iran and Syria. It says Iran has vowed to retaliate after Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing at least 7 people, including 3 senior Iranian commanders and at least 4 other Iranian officers amongst the dead. So this could spread the war out that's going on in Israel, in the Gaza Strip. Taiwan just had their most powerful earthquake in 25 years. Now this has just happened. And evidently there's tidal wave warnings, tsunami warnings going out in Asia from this earthquake. 9 dead in Taiwan. You know, the thing about these earthquakes is if they say 9 dead right now, generally the death toll on earthquakes is a slow thing to rise, and it takes, sometimes people are buried under rubble and stuff, and sometimes they don't know if they're alive or dead, and they add to that death toll later, and sometimes you might have 9 initially reported, and then maybe it might go up to 100 or 200 or even 500 later as the full extent of the earthquake becomes made manifest. Taiwan's strongest earthquake in a quarter century rocked the island during the morning rush hour Wednesday, damaging buildings, highways, and leaving 9 people dead. It's a big earthquake. Anything over a 7.4. It struck 18 kilometers southwest of, again, a hard one to pronounce, Hualien. I think that was the name of the city. Anyway, why do I get so many words that are so hard to pronounce? Oh my goodness. Now the silver price today, it's up 59 cents. And there's a number we haven't seen in a while. $26.67. Is it on its way? Is it finally starting to break free? Well, if we see this geopolitical turmoil spreading out even worse than it is, and if it continues to spread out, this geopolitical war turmoil, this is going to affect the price of gold and silver. So you got your solar panels and stuff, that silver's going into right now. I saw in Texas, honest to gosh, I never seen anything like it. They're worried about water pollution. They had some sort of a big It was probably a twister, but it brought hail the size of your fist. And it come down on some big solar complex where they have store the solar panels in Texas. And you ought to see the damage. The damage goes for miles. I seen a helicopter thing where they're flying over. Yeah, they're going to replace those panels. Plus, the water's leaking off of those panels into the ground reservoir, off of those broken panels, and it's leaching out chemicals and stuff. But they'll replace them. There's more needed for silver. Silver needed to make the new solar panels. And I heard someplace, I don't know if it's completely true, but it sounds like it's true. What they said was it takes 70 times as much. In other words, if you're using fossil fuels to create energy, and say you invest $25 million into a power plant that produces electricity, $25 million into it, and it runs off of fossil fuels, the old technology we used to use. Your investment in these in these new technologies like solar and wind, I've heard it takes 70 times as big an outlay. In other words, if you invested 25 million in the old-fashioned type of power, you'd have to put out 75 times more, or 70 times more. That's what I've heard. Now, I don't know if those figures are exactly correct, but I know it's more. I know it's a lot more. It's a lot easier to produce power with the old-fashioned way, the way we've been doing it for years with fossil fuels. And when you go for these new green methods and stuff like wind and stuff like that, it requires an awful lot. To produce the same amount of power, it requires an awful lot more infrastructure build out. But that's we do need these type of power supplies over the old-fashioned type, Now, I heard that they ran one of these big fusion reactors. They just set a new world record for the length of time they were able to run, and they did go over unity, meaning they produced more power than they consumed. So nuclear fusion is real. And they're getting so close. Once they get that thing fired up, and they can run it for more than just, say, 40 seconds. Say they can run it for hours, weeks, months, years. When will it shut down? They can get it running. Once they get it going, there's real free energy. That's real free energy. Nuclear fusion is the holy grail of energy. And so, if we get nuclear fusion, well, we don't really need to worry so much about energy at that point. We have all electricity we need once we have nuclear fusion. The next thing is converting over these cars that are electric cars. People are not crazy about having to sit for a half an hour and wait while the battery charges in their car. Now, they got to do something about that. They got to invent some new type of battery that you can charge up as quick as you can pump gas. People get there and they pump gas. What does it take, 3-4 minutes? Pumping gas? And they're off again. And they're away and they can drive like 400 miles. That's what we need in batteries. We need a battery that can just zoop, fill up. Like in, 5 minutes or less. That's what we need, a battery that can take the charge fast. That's the big thing. And then if we get fusion, well, then we got all the energy we need to charge all those batteries. So battery development should be top priority when it comes to electric cars. And also, if we get that fusion, those fusion reactors, man, we're on our way then at that point. Free energy. That's we can get off of these fossil fuels then at that point. That would be great. Save an awful lot of the Earth's resources and stuff like that. 22.78 for gold today. It's down $1.60, but she's on a tear, and as long as the financial system is wavering on collapse, and as long as these wars are spreading, this is acting as a driver. And I'm going to tell you, where should we look in the financial system? What parts we look at right now, and what should we scrutinize to see if the financial system has got problems? To see where the problems is, locate the real big problem, to where it's going to manifest itself. Now, the problem is spread through the financial system. Whenever you call something money that's not really money, and then you're able to create oomles and ooples of it, and people are trying to save in that stuff, and you're creating tons and tons and tons of it, as many units as there are leaves on the trees. Well, you got a problem there inherent in the system to begin with, but where's it going to manifest itself? What's going to be the point? It's in the bond market. That's where we got to watch. And what's been happening in the bond market the last couple of days? Well, we're going to get there. Now, see, gold just went up $3.30, right like that. Poof. This shows we're on a tear. Taking a look at crypto today, 66,590. Ethereum's 33.46. And XRP is 58.4 cents. So, Bitcoin seems to be wavering whenever it hits that 70, 71, 72,000, and it wavers back into the 60s again. This is the second time it's done that. It's like it's hitting a bit of a wall here in around 72,000, and I'm gonna see if it can bust through that in the upcoming days. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average today is up 92 points at 39,262. So we got an up day today. Had a down day yesterday. It was a pretty big down day yesterday. 300 points to the downside. It's bonds. Bonds is where crude oil today. I'm going to tell you guys what. This is another big indicator right here. The price of crude. And I said when it was just touching $80, I said we're on our way to 90. Well, now we're almost there. We're at 80, almost 86, 85, 89. It's up 74 cents on the day so far. Bonds and rates. We got to watch this bond market, guys. It's on the move right now, and a U.S. 10-year at 4.38. It's up 2 basis points again today. And the U.S. 30-year at 4.53, it's up 2.6 basis points today so far. We got to watch these yields. I'm going to tell you, as these yields climb, if they start to get really high, they start to get more attractive to investors. But that doesn't mean the yields can't go higher. And yes, you can lose money on bonds. If you buy in at a very low yield on a bond, and the yield rises on you, you can lose money. Taking a look at the U.S. dollar index, and the dollar is sharply fallen today. It's fell 4.44, which is almost a half a penny at 104.38. So we're gonna have to watch that 10-year really carefully if the yields start to rise too high on that 10-year. I figure once it gets over 5% on the 10-year, then it could very adversely affect the markets, and not in a positive way. See, the bond market's so big, you taking a look at your equity markets, the bond market is much larger market. It's like there are some really big markets out there. The gold market's a big market. And it puts a negative pull on the dollar if the gold price goes too high. But at this stage in the game, we're at that juncture now where the BRICS nations now are applying a lot of pressure on these bullion markets. They've been able to control the price of bullions using derivatives products through the COMEX and stuff. But now what we have is Shanghai Gold Exchange and stuff like that, and the buying power of the BRICS. India can buy tremendous amounts of silver and gold. So can China, and it's moving it's at inflection point where the needle is starting to turn. The BRICS are starting to pull the needle some. They've had total control over that needle, the COMEX has. But now there's a bit of a yielding of control starting to happen. And so they're not fudging it as much as they are able to before. Because it's more of a world market, more instead of just being a market that's totally controlled by the London Bullion Exchange and COMEX and stuff like that. It's starting to be divided, that control. It's going to swing. It's going to swing where they cannot control that price any longer. And it's going to find its free market value at a certain point, especially when they need it so much. Especially silver. It's needed so much for these things like solar panels. How much silver do you think was lost when that big storm hit in Texas? And far as the eye could see, those solar panels are busted. Probably thousands and thousands of ounces of silver were lost in just one storm. But the world needs it. It needs power. It just went through my head, just flew through my head about this fusion power. And I thought to myself how disruptive that would be to these big money interests out there who have controlled energy for so long. And if fusion were to come everywhere and it's basically free energy, I just got thinking about that in my mind, Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Have a great afternoon, guys. Bye-bye.